Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter, and I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Vols on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, man, I'm excited, Shane. Spring football is kicking off all across the SEC. We got the SEC basketball tournament here in Nashville this week, so that's exciting. I'll be down there as well. And, hey, a little teaser here, Shane, for the audience. We got some very, very special shows and some special guests coming on the show. So the next couple after this one, hey, I always appreciate you, Cousin Shane, on the show, but a little change of pace for some folks at home. So hopefully a star-studded cast of guests coming your way to that SEC podcast in the coming days. I'm excited.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Big gets, brother. You guys are going to absolutely love it. Not physically bigger, but these guys carry some weight with them, and we're going to have some great content. Mike's going to get it all set up for us there. So stay tuned. Little teaser. So just keep an eye on our social medias, YouTube, Twitters. We'll definitely keep you in the loop, but we're looking for some good stuff this coming week, Mike.
Yeah, and while most of the SEC, Shane, again, focused on the basketball tournament, not on this show. We're focused on spring football, and we've got kicking off here at Arkansas, South Carolina, Kentucky, Florida, joining Auburn, Missouri, and Vanderbilt already on the practice field. Just makes it feel like football is that much closer, doesn't it?
I love spring ball, man. I love it. It's just a little sample. It's that appetizer, you know. You went to like today, Mike. I went to a little Japanese restaurant. You know, I didn't go there for spring rolls, but I enjoyed the hell out of those spring rolls. That's what spring game is, man. It's a couple of hot spring rolls coming to your table, even though you know the big meal's on the horizon. And it's just a little taste, a little sample, but it's also fun. It is such a fun time, as long as everybody stays healthy. Cross your fingers, say your prayers. You know, bubble wrap your studs.
Yep.
That's where we're at. But you know, this is a good time for the family. I keep hitting on this. I know it's like a dead horse here, but taking the kids to those spring games, it was awesome. It's just a great time. It's something that these youngins remember for the rest of their lives. So I hope they pack out those stadiums. I hope we have wonderful spring. The football starts, Mike. We start hitting 70 degrees here in East Tennessee. It's like God knows football's in the air, you know.
Well, I'll tell you where they should be really excited, Shane, entering spring football, and that's at Arkansas. We haven't got to talk about the Razorbacks here in a little while. Some great news here, broken by Sam Pittman on Tuesday. Had no idea this was even in the works, Shane, but one of the biggest positions of need for the Razorbacks at defensive backfield. You know, they struggled. They've got Dwight McGlothern, the outstanding corner, the transfer they brought in, ironically, last year from LSU. Well, now they're going to be teaming him up with arguably the top corner in the transfer portal, Shane, Jameer Singletary from Georgia. So once again, we've seen this before. Sam Pittman reaching into, his roots there in Georgia, working for Kirby Smart. Now one of Kirby's former defensive backs joining the Arkansas program. And why this is such a big deal, Shane, Singletary was the number 5 overall corner prospect in the country just a year ago. He's got 4 years of eligibility remaining. And again, this huge need for Arkansas. They're retooled secondary with new coaches in this. They got Marcus Woodson coaching the secondary and Travis Williams, the new defensive coordinator. So completely new system, fresh start here. And who knows, if he lives up to the 5-star billing, suddenly Arkansas, what looked like a weakness, could be a strength for the Razorbacks.
I wonder if you could tell me anything about Jaheim Singletary.
Well, I can now because he's signed his SEC agreement with us. He was here on his OV this Sunday, Monday, and left this morning, and we were very fortunate that you'll have to talk to him, Trey, but I can talk about him since he signed his SEC agreement with us. We're excited about him. I mean, big time player out of Georgia.
I mean, just think about it. Sometimes it gets lost in these transfer portals of how big of a commit this is for your program. Because if you would have landed him on National Signing Day, you know what I'm saying? There'd be 2 bags of chips sitting next to you, one of his. So I think this is monumental for Pittman and company to go out. You know, what were some of the problems we had last year? It was the secondary, Mike. It was shootouts, games that shouldn't have been, and they addressed it, and you address it in a big way. So this was a big get for Arkansas, and I know those fans are tickled pink right now.
Yeah, and don't forget, Shane, that Lane Kiffin, he gets billed as the portal king and all that because he brings in 20 transfers a year. But It's Arkansas and Sam Pittman, I would argue, Shane, that take in more transfers and turn them into elite players. Just look at Drew Sanders last year. I wouldn't say he struggled at Alabama, but he just wasn't a big household name. Comes to Arkansas, I mean, damn, he was nearly, you could argue, the best linebacker in the SEC last year. John Ridgway, the big nose tackle. They've landed several players from Missouri, ironically, to rejoin with Barry Odom. All those players now off to the NFL. Felipe Franks, year 1 at quarterback. The receivers last year, Hazelwood, leading the charge there. I mean, they have done this time and time again. Matt Landers, another one. They bring in these transfers, and they get the most out of them. And I have to imagine that was a selling point for an elite prospect like Singletary.
Well, and Pittman's, I mean, he can identify talent, especially when you got college film on tape. It's almost a little bit easier. It's almost cheating at that point. And what I love about some of the recruits that you talked about here, you see some of these guys casting a wide net, hoping that they get, from some of these Division II schools and maybe some Division I's that you just didn't get to see a lot of playing time, and you're just hoping that you can develop them. It's like another freshman, if you will. But Sam's a little bit more surgical with his approach, and what he's able to get with just about everyone that he pulls out of the portal. This should raise some flags. The fact that you're going to Georgia, you're getting a 5-star talent to come to your campus. I can only imagine he will be a focal piece of that defense at some point.
Yeah, and the last thing I have just on this topic, Shane, already seeing some people kind of confused. Remember, there's a deadline of getting into the portal if you want to transfer from SEC school to SEC school. That was February 1st, but it's not when you announce your commitment. And he's already enrolled and signed and everything with Arkansas, so we don't have to worry about it. But it isn't you had to commit by February 1. It was you had to be in the portal by February 1 to be eligible for the upcoming season, and he was in the portal before February 1st. So Arkansas fans, immediate eligibility here. Just in case, I already saw Ole Miss people. Hey, what the hell? What about the deadline? But
everybody ran to their calendars real quick, didn't they?
Well, Shane, speaking of Arkansas.
Well, I want to ask, because Pittman's going to talk here in a second, and when he's talking about the SEC, he keeps mentioning that he signed the SEC documents. Yeah. Is that because he's transferring from – is there like a specific document that you have to sign when you're going from SEC to SEC, or am I misunderstanding that?
No, you just have to do it when you get to your new school, but you can't talk about a player until they're officially part of your program. So that's the same deal as high school recruiting, where Kirby couldn't come out in a press conference and say, Arch Manning should come to Georgia because XYZ. You have to wait till they physically sign, and I think that's why he was saying I can confirm it because he has signed. He's part of the Arkansas program now.
Yeah. He had a couple cold beers after that letter, didn't he? Yes, sir.
Well, we got a new offense here in Arkansas, of course, Shane. Dan Enos back as the offensive coordinator. Kendall Browse, get the hell out of here off to TCU, wherever you went. But what's the biggest thing?
Offense. Sorry. I'm fueling the fire, Mike. Let's do it, man.
What's the
He's what's been holding us back this whole time. Thank God he's out of here.
What's the
Just
number
kidding.
one thing
Just
Shane
kidding.
fans always complain about when they are not getting the ball to the tight end? That I hear that. Hell, I've heard that for 10 years all
Yeah.
across the SEC. Doesn't matter the offense or the scheme. Why aren't we using the tight end? And now we're bringing in a coordinator that does utilize the tight end, something that has been missing in a large extent in the Arkansas offense. Here's Sam Pittman on how Dan Enos plans to utilize tight ends. And also, we got some new receivers in here. This is the second offseason in a row. We're basically retooling the entire receiving core via transfers. Here's Sam Pittman on that.
And then with your tight ends, kind of what's your impression of that group right now, and what do you want to see from them, I guess, in the next few weeks?
Well, I think Bax has stepped up. Bax is moving better. Tyrus Washington has really had a good obviously working his tail off, working extremely hard. The two Has brothers, and I know Dylan's not a tight end, but Luke is, are two of the hardest working kids you'll ever see. As a matter of fact, I called their mama last night to tell them that because they are hard working, no nonsense kids. So I think Luke will help us. You asked specifically about tight end. I think Dylan will too, but you asked about tight ends, and that would be probably those five guys right now. Obviously, waiting on Shamar Easter to get here in late May, early June.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then finally, you mentioned, I think a minute ago on tight ends, you said we're going to need more. So does that mean, like, what tweaks have you seen for what Dan's going to implement? Like, will tight ends be a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we can be in 12, we can be in 13, things that we never even dreamt about over the last 3 years. So the tight end recruiting, which we feel like we've done a really good job this year, and the two that we've signed. But is there a place for a portal guy? Possibly. I don't know. I really like who's in there. But at the same time, I think we've got to make sure that by when the portal opens back up that we're ready to go with. Luke would be the guy that is the question mark, because we know what Tyrus is going to be able to do and what Bax is going to be able to do, and if we feel like we've got enough tight ends to function, then we would stay out of the portal. If not, just numbers alone, we would go in and try to see if we can find somebody exceptional. Now at the wideout position, that's a little bit different story there. Obviously, we haven't been throwing and catching and all that kind of stuff, but if you look at Jaden Wilson would be Bryce Stevens, those guys, the guys Baque, Sategna, the guys that you think would be there, they are. And then I think we hit the jackpot with the three transfers we got. Not again, they haven't caught balls, but I'm talking about work ethic and ability with Teslaw and Broden and Armstrong. I think all three of them are going to help us.
All right, Shane. So hey, we got some new toys to play with here. Dan Enos, KJ Jefferson to utilize in the fall. I thought that was the biggest question mark I had with Arkansas all off season. And then we got to fall camp, and it was like, my God, we got all-stars here, all-stars there. I didn't know if they were just blowing smoke, but it turned out they knew what they were doing. And just, based on that, I realized different players, different scheme, but it gives me confidence that this coaching staff will get these guys up to speed in a hurry.
Oh yeah, man. They're and I always find it funny when these coaches say, I haven't seen them throw the ball. I'm like, bullshit. You got cameras all over that place. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why we're playing this game. So I always like it when Sam's got a little pep in his step. That means he knows what he's working with. And I think this next group's gonna be all right. And yes, gotta get the tight ends involved. That's one of the most frustrating parts I thought with Arkansas, is because I thought that was going to be a strong suit.
Yeah.
And not that it wasn't. There was talent, and unfortunately, we're going to talk about him in South Carolina here in a minute. But Arkansas it kind of felt like they shit the bed with the tight end role. And I'd like to get back to that because that is a big part of college football these days. Look at your national champs, man.
Yep.
You know, arguably the best tight end in the country. So you got to use that position, utilize it. It's not just another blocker, man.
Right. And going back to what you said there, Shane, I remember just the other day we played clips from old Eli Drinkowitz, and they were asking about his transfer quarterback. Hadn't seen him throw, but he's got good zip on the ball. He's got that deep ball. He's got that accuracy. Like, what are you talking about? What?
Yeah. Rumor has it.
The last thing on Arkansas, Shane, this is going to be, I think, going to determine how well Arkansas season goes. KJ Jefferson in this Dan Enos system. No mistake. I mean, they call me the president of the KJ Jefferson fan club. So I got confidence that KJ is going to have his best season yet playing under Dan Enos. Here's Sam Pittman on how that's coming together.
Hey, Coach, with KJ having been in a system for the last 3 years, a certain offensive system, do you guys just like start over from scratch in terms of everything, terminology and playbook and all that stuff? Or is there like a marriage of the old and the new, or how does that work?
As you well know, Trey, I've had so many jobs. And so the terminology of calls, of line calls and things of that nature, the ones that the kids make, those would be not a whole lot of change there. The terminology of the play calls and the things of that nature, a lot of change. Dan, that was one of the things Dan asked me when I spoke with him. He said, "Hey, what do you think? Do I need to marry my stuff to the last 3 years?" Or I said, "Oh, hell no, it's not. It won't roll off your tongue. You won't, if you're having to remember what to call it versus, hey, this is my offense. I know what it is." And we have nowadays, Trey, it's so different, and it's both sides of the ball, defense as well. Nowadays you have so many walks, so much more meeting time than you had before, that I believe that certainly for spring ball. And then I believe you can bring in these 8 guys and any transfer like Jaheim's coming in, in June. I believe that you can get a kid ready a lot easier now in the rules that they're giving us than you ever could. So they're going to keep what their terminology is as far as that goes, and our kids will have to learn it, which they've not seemed to have a problem with it on either side of the ball.
All right, Shane, so I got to throw that little wrinkle in there because this is the first time for KJ that he's not in the Kendall Briles system. He's I guess he started out 1 year under Chad Morris, but still that was, somewhat similar to Kendall Briles, the spread, the, tempo and all that. So this is going to be a change, but, kind of like Dan Enos coached Jalen Hurts and got him had to change his play style a little bit. And we all know the rest of the story there with Jalen Hurts nearly leading the Eagles to the Super Bowl. So he's already comparing KJ to Jalen Hurts down there. I think this is going to be a great move for KJ Jefferson. I think it's going to unlock some of his talents that we've yet to see.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, even he banged up last year. There was some times he was like freaking Superman out there. KJ is an absolute beast. Yeah. He is truly, and if he can put together a healthy season, my God, watch out. Arkansas could be dangerous. And I hope for your sake they are, man. So then all this bandwagon talk, no, I mess with you. You're not, you were there before everybody else, but I want to see Arkansas shine, and that starts with KJ, and it starts with that offense, catering it to what he's good at. So I think that's what we're going to see here.
All right, Shane, well, let's kick it down to Columbia, where we got another team full of hope and promise. The South Carolina Gamecocks overachieved both seasons under Shane Beamer. They look to do it again, which if they overachieve this season, Shane, that who knows, that might mean winning the SEC East. Not predicting it. Calm down, Georgia Bulldog. My God, we can't even – if we suggest Georgia's going 11-1, we got to hear about it for a week. I'm not saying that. But they got some great pieces. But the biggest question mark for me, I'm just going to continue to say it, so like a broken record here, but we just don't know what we got in offensive coordinator Dowell Loggains till we see him coaching this team on the field, calling the plays. Has not done that in college. He's done it in the NFL. It's a little bit different animal, but not questioning the man, just saying that is an unknown. Let's kick it over to Shane Beamer real quick on how the schemes come together.
Shane, as Dowell has gotten in, have you and he, kind of come together on a consensus for what the playbook will look like? And are there certain things that you'll have to maybe table until the summer, like until you get past the second window of the transfer portal?
Yeah, a little bit of both of all that. Certainly we've talked, as far as what we're going to look like going forward. You've obviously got to present an offense to the players in spring practice, what that is. And there's going to be some new things that we call things. There's going to be some things that are identical to what we called them last year. I mean, there's going to be elements that we want to carry over. There's going to be elements that either Dow wants to bring or that we've looked at as a staff and said we needed to be doing more of this or less of this, like any season as well. Certainly there will be some pieces, some players that we add to the mix after spring practice for sure. Incoming freshmen, obviously, and but the bulk of it, will be in. And again, it's why you go out there and practice. We have an idea of what it wants to look like. I was reading some quotes from this press conference. I saw where Trey Knox said we were going to be up tempo and go really, really fast all the time. That was news to me. So I'm glad Trey and Dow have discussed that. Dow and I haven't. But that's another story. But no, I mean, we went fast at times last year, but we want to see what best fits our personnel and what best fits us as a team, offense, defense, and special teams. But yes, we've had some conversations. And again, like I've said before, it's what can our players best execute? There's things that we did well last year that we want to continue, and there's some things that as we sit there and try and make this offense the best it can be for us that we want to do differently, whether it be terminology or how we call plays, overall operation, things like that we can improve on.
I guess, Shane, from an identity standpoint with Dowell, what do those conversations look like about what your identity looks like offensively, regardless of what plays you call, what system you run?
Yeah, probably very similar, Colin, to when I got hired. I mean, balanced, and what is balance? Balance to me is not 50-50. It's the ability to run the ball when you need to run it and throw it when you need to throw it. So we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to be a physical offense that plays really, really hard and has the ability to be explosive. If you go back and look at our success the last 2 years, Colin, I mean, it's amazing. Just look at the explosive plays. For us, that's runs over 12 yards and passes over 18. When we win the explosive play battle in games against our opponent, I mean, our record it's like lights out how good we are. So continuing to find the ability to be explosive. And then whatever the identity is, quit freaking turning the ball over so much. I mean, it's 2 years in a row we've been last in the SEC in turning the ball over. It's embarrassing. And for me as the head coach, it's really embarrassing that 2 years in a row, no one in the SEC has thrown more interceptions and fumbled the ball given the ball to the other team more than we have. So obviously we haven't done a good enough job the last 2 years, starting with me, of coaching that. And 2 years in a row, we've been, I think in 2022, we led the SEC in takeaways. Excuse me, 2021, we led the SEC in takeaways. 2022, I think we were second in the SEC defensively in takeaways, and we only missed leading it by one turnover, I believe. So we've been dynamic on defense. Let's continue to do that. But then offensively, we got to quit turning the ball over so much. So to me, that's an identity. Quit giving the ball to the other team. Run it when you need to run it, throw it when you need to throw it, and let's continue to find ways to be explosive.
All right, Shane. So, I mean, this is something, you can't overlook. Building that identity, whether it's offense or defense, that's something that, you can take for granted. But if your team doesn't have it, it's pretty apparent on the field in the SEC. What's your level of, maybe not concern, but just intrigue that, that this is being built and how quickly they can develop it in South Carolina under Dowell Loggains?
Yeah, I think the whole Loggains thing, you're either in two camps, Mike. Either that Beamer couldn't get anybody else, so we got Loggains, or Beamer truly saw something in there and brought something to this program that will amplify what they were doing. And I think that's the key, Mike. If you're in that camp, he brings up that we want to be a balanced offense. We want to run when we want to run. We want to pass when we want to pass. Well, you remember the start of the season, that was the biggest problem, is that they couldn't run when they needed to run. And when they threw, everybody knew where the ball was going. So I think that got corrected later in the season, and he wants a guy that will continue that path. And I just think the verbiage here, if you're just listening to what Coach is saying, man, he's like, hey, we're going to take pieces of what he wants to do. He's going to take pieces of what's been working here. We're going to see what's going around in the league, and we're going to implement that as well. So they're going to be kind of like chameleons, man. And I think that's a good thing. You don't have to be freaking Josh Heupel and create a new style of offense here. You just got to take the pieces that you have on that team, get the most out of them. And I think that's the approach they're going with here. So I don't think that this is a splashy hire, but I think that it's going to be more of a team effort.
Yeah, and, at the end of the day, Shane, I mean, whether you were the first choice or not, hell, I don't know if Shane Beamer was the first choice.
Right.
Going back to Sam Pittman, I sure as hell know he was not the first choice at Arkansas. You just referenced Josh Heupel. He wasn't the first choice at Tennessee. You know what? I just named 3 coaches that have been very successful in a short period of time. So it's not necessarily about that. It's about fit. It's about culture. And hell, Loggains had a number of, I don't know if he got any offers or anything, but he was getting interviewed by a number of SEC coaches. So this is a very well-respected guy, and he's already proven to be an elite recruiter, which has half the battle at a school like South Carolina. You have to be a good recruiter to succeed in a job like that. So I'm just fascinated to see how this all plays out. And again, man, if you look at that early season slate, Shane, North Carolina on the neutral field, at Georgia, which is, I think, the 3rd week of the season, Mississippi State at home, you can't sleep on them, and then at Tennessee. That's your first 4 or 5 games there. So this has got to be coming together quickly. Otherwise, all this hope is going to die pretty quickly. You know what?
Well, to be fair, Mike, I wasn't your first choice, So. But we pieced this damn thing together, didn't we? We're making this relationship work. So I think you just really never know what you have until you have a chance to prove it. And Loggains is going to get that opportunity. And if it takes off, we can sit back and talk about how Beamer's just a coaching mastermind, not only with talent on the field, but putting together a staff that has really shined at the SEC level. Or if we're Camp 1 and we have we trip out of the gate and we have a tough start and 3 or 4 losses, I think we turn around and say, yeah, see, I knew Loggains wasn't going to be the guy. So there's a lot of pressure. We talked earlier this season about some of the highest pressure jobs, and this is why I've got Loggains up there, because I think there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on Columbia. South Carolina is not sneaking into this season, with the way they went out last year, hitting and screaming and yelling, Everybody knows that South Carolina's got a lot of talent coming back, and the expectations are a lot higher in Columbia.
Right. And last thing on the Gamecocks, Shane, I just thought, the South Carolina fans would appreciate this. They probably would have won the bowl game had they had a damn healthy tight end. They were down to 1 tight end. He got banged up. They were dominating that football game before Nate got hurt. Nate Atkins got hurt. Now, according to Beamer, with these transfers, Trey Knox from Arkansas, Nick Elksis from Florida, among others, we got too many tight ends now, which you'd rather have too many than not enough. Let's kick it over one last time to Shane Beamer.
Trey Knox was in here earlier saying he thinks he has a little bit of Jaheim Bell in him. He feels like he's already a leader in that tight end room. What have you seen from him, and how is he kind of going to be an asset to this team already, just as a weapon in that passing game?
Yeah, he's an athletic guy. I mean, he's impressive. That tight end group's really impressive, period. And we've got so much more depth in that room and different skill sets. We got guys, that are your true, more conventional tight ends, if you will, and not that we didn't have it last year, we just got more of them. And Trey's a big body. Josh Simon's a stud and experienced guy, and Nick Elksness, and then the freshman that we have here as well. It's a good group. I mean, it went from we don't even really have tight ends in the bowl game to we've got, I don't want to say too many because you never have too many, but we got a lot of them. And I think it's been good for Trey. One, he's He's a great young man, great personality, as you guys saw today. Always has a smile on his face. I saw where he commented about the family atmosphere here, and that's pretty cool to hear him say as a head coach. Because he's coming from another SEC program and he's been around the block a while. So we talk about positive energy all the time. He's a guy that's always got positive energy. And he's an athletic guy that I think is working really, really hard in the weight room, on special teams, on offense. And I think it's been a good transition for him. We're not necessarily taking everything that they did at Arkansas and saying all of a sudden this is our offense at Carolina, but there is some carryover in certain elements of what we're doing offensively, where from a learning standpoint, I think that's been a little bit easier for Trey, and he can help those other tight ends as well because he's got some experience and maybe what Dowell's calling and things like that has carried over from Arkansas.
Well, they call it tight end U over there, so you got to have tight ends. You got to keep putting them in the league if you're going to wear that trophy.
Yeah, don't forget. I mean, again, maybe it's unfair, Shane, because you already referenced Georgia and their incredible tight end room, but it's a copycat league. And when you see some of the stuff Georgia's been doing, again, you don't got Brock Bowers. You don't got Darnell Washington, because those are like two unicorns. And the other guy they got, Oscar Delp, was another guy South Carolina tried to get. But, it'll be interesting to see if, some of what we saw in Athens the last couple of years across the SEC, some of the teams try to adopt some of that, because obviously it's working well down there. You know what?
Yeah, and it kind of blows my mind we don't see it more, because everything you see in the SEC usually comes from the NFL, and that's a huge part, man.
Yeah.
Tight end play in the NFL, they usually got, and it's not just one guy anymore. Obviously there's some Kelce's floating around, but it's a committee, and you've got to have a strong tight end room, and it will impact you in the SEC.
Yep. Well, all right, Shane, next let's kick it on down to Kentucky, where they have begun spring practice there in Lexington, and I don't know about you, Shane, but it seems like Kentucky, maybe kind of, I don't want to say maybe inconsistent is the right word, but we have a great season, and then we take a little bit of a step back. And then we have a great season, and there's expectations. We take a little bit of a step back. This is a team, a program.
It's like my diet. I start good, and then all of a sudden I fall off the wagon, and I'm eating Little Tokyo. So
I think Mark Stoops and company, Shane, they perform better, and maybe I'm crazy, but I think they perform better when there's low expectations. They're being doubted. Yep. We've got some pieces to work with. Got that chip. It's like, they have to come into the season with a chip on their shoulder, because as soon as people start patting them on the back, you lose a little bit of that edge. We lost that toughness on the line of scrimmage, particularly on offense, and that's what we said coming into the spring. This is the biggest question mark on Kentucky. Given the transfers they brought in, they should be strong everywhere else. They've added transfers on the offensive line. Mark Stoops asked, what's the biggest area of concern? Without hesitation, is that offensive line.
Mark, is there a group where you're maybe not concerned, might not be the right word, but curious about what you've got coming back or coming in?
Probably quite a few. You just want to make sure you're improving, growing. I think it's fair to say that I've addressed it. You've written about it, probably talked about it. That we need to improve in certain spots in the offensive line. I think we've addressed that issue. Always want to continue to work really hard and get better. But personnel wise, I feel good, and I feel like we have some numbers and some guys to work with, and I like their approach, and there's quite a few. I just feel like there's really good leadership with Eli and Jagger have another year experience, and of course Kenneth. But then you bring in a guy like Marcus Cox, and he's so big and athletic and really good person, good leader, and just the way he goes about his business, the way he goes through walkthroughs, the way he goes through meetings. I mean, he's just a very mature young man and works really hard. And by the way, he looks very athletic out there. So that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, he said, I know y'all talked about it. I know that SEC podcast brought it up a few times, so I went out and addressed the problem. So he knows what we're saying.
Well, if they do, Shane, legitimately, Kentucky could be one of the biggest surprises in the SEC if they shore that up. If Devin Leary, we'll get to him in a second, if he's healthy, if he reverts to how he was his junior season, I mean, we're already seeing these lists. Shane, we had SEC StatCat on a week or so ago. He says Devin Leary's number 3 quarterback in the SEC. So I didn't know that he was that highly regarded. I knew, he was the number 1 quarterback in the portal, but we got all these pieces. We got Liam Cohen back. If they can flip that switch, there's no reason Kentucky, after a disappointing season, can't flip that switch and have another 10-win or better season, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, last year was so frustrating for Kentucky, and rightfully so, man. And a lot of that was because of the O-line. Yeah. There was just not enough push when you wanted to run the ball, and there was not enough protection when Will needed to back up and throw the ball, and your quarterback barely survived the whole season. Hell, he didn't really survive the whole season, And I think looking back on it, that was somebody dropped the ball, man. Recruiting, training, film study, something went wrong there, and I think that's getting addressed because whenever I think of Kentucky football, man, I think about trench warfare. I think about some big uglies pushing the ball, and when they need to get 3 or 4 yards, finding it. That's what we missed last season, and I think if they had a good, and I don't want to live in the past, Mike, you know what I'm saying? It's hard not to, but looking forward, I think they get back to their roots here, and that's the first thing he talks about.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, Shane. So Mark Stoops also talks about, their transfer quarterback, Devin Leary from NC State. They've got an incredibly strong foundation there. I believe this was year 12, maybe I think year 12 under Mark Stoops. I mean, he's been there forever. Is looking for your quarterback's got to be a leader. Otherwise, he's just not an effective quarterback. Is it easier to come into a program that's established, that has leadership, and kind of, you can't force it. It's got to come naturally. Do you think it's easier to do that, or is it easier to come into a program that is in rebuild mode and disarray and is lacking any kind of leadership and being a leader? Because I think that's the biggest challenge for Devin Leary this offseason leading up to the year is to emerge as a leader on this Kentucky team.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man, because obviously even work, you don't want to start a job with a company that doesn't have some sort of structure in place. You don't want to be the one that brings that in. So to answer your question, I think an established program is what I want to come into, and maybe one of the reasons he chose Kentucky. Say what you want, they're going to have early, if not the first quarterback selected in the draft, he's definitely a first rounder. So I think that's the trend that Kentucky can say, hey, look at these guys that have transferred in and went on to play in the NFL. This is a stepping stone to the league, if you're not going to places like Georgia or Alabama. And if they can turn around and do this with Leary, I mean, buddy, you're starting something bigger in Kentucky. You're the place to go to rehab and get to the league if you're at a program that's struggling.
Right. And I mean, he had every opportunity, Shane. Right before he signed with Kentucky, he went down there, met with Hugh Freeze at Auburn, which, for Hugh Freeze, a strong track record of developing quarterbacks, but the decision was obviously Kentucky teaming up with Liam Cohen and his NFL experience back on the sidelines in Kentucky. Let's kick it over to Mark Stoops on getting his good buddy back. It's like the Hangover, the 3 best friends united again.
You've seen Devin just being around the building, one practice, kind of take a leadership role.
Devin is just waiting to lead, and what I mean by waiting is he's earning it and he's doing it respectfully. He can take over a room in 5 minutes, but he knows that it's about going out and proving it day in and day out and not forcing that. You've heard me talk about that before. I think it's very important to just be authentic, be who you are, but also lead and find your voice and at the right time in the right moment. And I think he is certainly, let's just put it this way, it'll be very easy for him to step into a full command type of position. He's that kind of guy.
Mark, do you feel, in terms of Liam, his familiarity with the roster, that you're ahead of schedule with a coordinator change at this point?
Well, it is. I mean, just by the way, just the timing of it, right? Last year and this year was different. It certainly helped us with the timing of it. Even though I have to wait through the pro season, it still was sooner than it was a year ago. And, that helped, and he is familiar with it. And the players, many of the players have been through it with him and know him personally. Even the recruits, even if they didn't play under him, they knew him, through that year of recruiting prior to that. So, I think the familiarity definitely helps.
Mark, with Liam, is it like he never left, or do you see a little different?
Yeah, a little both. It's a definite comfort level. I really, enjoy that part of it. It's almost like he never left. Yeah, just like I said, he has that type of personality where he's always in the staff room. It's always open door. I mean, he's never in his office. I bet you didn't even unpack that thing yet. He sits in the staff room because guys are in there. They're always collaborating and talking and watching film. Players are in and out of there, and it's a good environment, and it's fun.
I mean,
Three best friends. Can we play that song? Or is that going to get pulled from YouTube?
We'll play it on the podcast version for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you've got to be excited if you're a Kentucky fan because of what the offense was under Liam Cohen.
Right.
The pieces are different, but there's tons of talent to work with. And hell, great point by Mark Stoops. I didn't even really think about it, but a lot of these guys were recruited by Liam Cohen. They just, they didn't know he was going to be gone, but they've got to be extremely happy that he's back calling the shots on offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, Wildcat fan, you're like, damn, we missed our shot last year. But then what do they go out to do? They go get another first-round potential quarterback. They get, I think, one of the best running backs in the portal, and I think they just loaded up, and they're going to be, they may even be better than last year, man.
Right.
I mean, that's saying a lot to lose all those pieces, and that's the way college football is now. You can just go into the cupboards and find you a few more ingredients and try again. So I think that's where we're at with Kentucky, and there's a buzz, man. There's already a buzz. You felt it at the end of the season because I've got a lot of Kentucky friends up there,
Oh, yeah.
and the expectations are starting to rise again. So this should be an exciting season for sure.
Well, again, going back to what we said, Shane, that is the reason you want to have continuity. Yeah, these prospects know what they're getting from Mark Stoops and this coaching staff and this program. It's not a guesswork. I mean, we think Hugh Freeze will be great at Auburn, but we don't know. We know what we're getting in Mark Stoops, and that clearly is paying off on the recruiting trail and the transfer portal, and why there shouldn't be a rebuild in Kentucky. If anything else, like you said, they're going to be better despite losing some key pieces.
Absolutely.
All right, last but not least, Shane, let's kick it on down to Gainesville, where Florida, year 2 under Billy Napier. And man, what a wild tenure it has been. It's been an interesting offseason for Billy Napier, disappointing finish. And I just, I don't want to go down back memory lane like you were saying, let's leave the past in the past. But there was, we were very close to having a ton of momentum at the end of year 1 and saying, man, we got this thing rolling. So we're not quite there. We had some disappointment, but there's no reason that they can't recapture that momentum. But again, you talk about Will Levis maybe going number 1. Now they're saying Anthony Richardson. They go number. I mean, all these SEC quarterbacks go number 1.
I know.
Bryce Young and all that, but it's going to be interesting to see. Let's just assume that Anthony Richardson is a top 10 pick. You're trying to get better after losing a top 10 overall prospect. It's going to be tough, and we got a new defensive coordinator. We got a 4 or 5 on the offensive line. So it is really a new era here in Gainesville. What's your thoughts on Billy Napier and company heading into year 2 with, just lower expectations than I can ever remember for a Florida Gator program?
Yeah. Well, on the Anthony Richardson thing, I've been watching a lot of that combine and yeah, absolute freak athlete. And I mean, it looks like the numbers are off the charts and everything like that, but I don't want to, that's just lazy. It's a lazy take to say that he did not get the program to where it needed to be because he had a top quarterback. You know, I mean, you got to buy into the whole system. And one of the things that Coach says here in a little bit is, you know, and I think it makes perfect sense when he's talking about living in a village, you know, it speaks differently because it was all new. That's one thing that he said. This is a program that systematically has failed season after season. So to fix the system as a whole, you got to tear it all down. You can't just piece it together and you know, I mean, obviously, if you could come down there and kind of mirror what was with Coach Mullen or something, maybe you could have gotten a better season there. But that's not what Florida wanted. Florida wanted to get back to the dominant years of the 90s, you know, and to do that, they had to strip this thing down. So we knew there was going to be a little bit of fallout. We didn't think it'd fall as bad as it did last season, but maybe they needed to hit ground bottom to move this thing up because the pieces are there. Florida will always be a hotbed for recruiting. It will be a hotbed for talent, and it's been kind of a rocky start, but I think sometimes you got to get that shit out, man. You got to get some of that noise out of your locker room, and I'm not saying that's what Anthony Richardson was, but I guarantee, because we had some kids dismissed last year, that there was a little bit of a cancer in there. So hopefully that's cleared up, and these guys are going to play together, man. Play college football together as brothers, and I think if you can do that, you can be successful in this league. Now, the expectations are low, so they're not expecting you to win the East next year, but you're gonna have to do a lot better than you did the tail end of last season.
Right. So let's kick it over to Napier, Shane, because a lot of those comments here, year two, the second year jump, you know, that we see that across college football. You know, if you are a really good coach, year two is when you really start to see the growth of the program under the new head coach. So a lot on the line for Billy Napier and company. We got to start seeing some results, but at the same time, you know, you can't get rid of this guy if they don't win 10 games, given the difficulty of the schedule and all the staff and player turnover. Got to preach patience for the Florida Gators. Let's kick it over to Billy Napier.
Mark and then back. We dived in a little bit on year two last year, but where do you hope or where do you expect to see the biggest jump in year two success or on the field, or, you know, this time of year maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, probably the biggest thing is you start in a different place, you know, from a knowledge standpoint, a communication standpoint, the set of fundamentals at every position. So you got a core group of veteran players that, you know, they walk out here the first day you put the ball down, they don't blink, right? So not necessarily what to do, but now it's how to do it, why we do it that way. And I also think the players will benefit from all parts of the organization being in the second year. You know, I'm going back looking at my notes from the previous year. I mean, need multiple pages, you know, to get all those things fixed. So, I mean, I just think we're starting in a different place. You know, it's ultimately from a system standpoint, offense, defense, game changers. It's like you moved to a country and learned a new language last year. Now you've been living in the country for a while, so you're a little more fluent, and you know, I think all of a sudden you start to process a little bit quicker. You anticipate better. You play faster. You get more production. So. We still have, you know, 27 brand new scholarship players out there, but overall, veterans and then a group of rookies that I think bring some things to the table.
Another thing is too, I mean, you have a new offensive line coming out here with this dynamic running game. So what's the timeline for this offensive line to gel and get ready for the season?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about. You know, line of scrimmage players, in particular all the mid-year players, I think, make us better. And then we've got a good core group. You know, you think about offensively, Austin, Kingsley, Richard, or Richie. And then I think guys like Slaughter, who are in year two, Herman's in year two. And then here comes all the rookies, right, the freshmen and the transfers. So defensively kind of feel the same way. good-looking group of portal players out there, 10 of them.
Follow up on what Mark was asking. What were the kind of the challenges at a defensive coordinator and filling that so quickly? I mean, how much of what you guys are running is going to be what you ran last year versus what you ran in the past, kind of meshing that together in a really short time?
Yeah, no, I think we're in our tree of coaches, if that makes sense. I think Austin is well respected out there. I think the opportunities that he had this offseason is a reflection of that. But Austin was with us in the past as a graduate assistant. He came back as a position coach, and then certainly for him to get an opportunity to coordinate defense for 2 years and really do a good job. I think his reputation is good. So that one was a little simpler than the others. I think it's going to allow us to, he knows the verbiage, he understands the system, and certainly, that network of people is pretty well respected there. I think from that staff at Louisiana, I think we've got 4 defensive coordinators out there, calling defense. So, Austin has done a great job. He's hit the ground running, and so far so good.
And maybe a hire that I've said it before, and I kind of stick with it, Shane. That will define how well Billy Napier's tenure goes in Gainesville. Is this new defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong, who he's worked with at Louisiana? They hired him away from Alabama. He was at Alabama for 9 days, so we can't really quite call him a Nick Saban disciple, but he was at Southern Miss previously, 2 years as a defensive coordinator. They're pretty fired up to get him down there in Gainesville.
Yeah.
But what do you think? It's too bold of me saying, hey, I mean, this coordinator hire could determine Billy Napier's future, because we just can't have a disastrous defense again.
Oh, Cujo's mad over here. Billy Napier just broke into your house. Make sure you're saying nice things about him. Boy, Mike, I hate to put it all on a coordinator.
Yeah.
But that's what Florida's going to have to do next year, especially when you look at the teams in their league. They're going to have to slow these teams down. You do that with good defense. Right. You do that with establishing the running game. We know the running game's going to be there. Florida Gators going to have one of the best running back rooms in the country, man. They're going to lean heavy on that, but you got to have a defense to back you up. You got to have a defense that's 3 and out, and they can control the clock. So a lot of pressure here, and yeah, I think that was one of the most important hires this offseason. So the spotlight will definitely be on Florida there. Billy especially, year 2, because this is St. Papal's college teams, man. You got coaches like Kelly coming in and winning the SEC West season 1,
Right.
There's I know we want to be patient, but this is the SEC, man. We've got 14, about to have 16 teams, best teams in the country. You got to win now, and I don't think a 7-8 win season is going to be something that Florida fans are going to be happy with. So, a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure down there in Gainesville.
Right, and remember, Shane, going into last season, there was a little stat I dug up. I can't remember it specifically, but I think it was 15-3 or 18-3, something like that. Billy Napier's record in 1-score games. So, I mean, he's been outstanding in 1-score games. It didn't translate fully year 1 there at Florida. He won a couple of those. He lost a couple as well. But he loves being in these tight ball games. It could because his coaching acumen, he got confidence he can win them. But if you ain't got the defense, and you've got all kinds of questions at critical positions on offense, I mean, you ain't winning many 1-score games with a bad defense. You know what I mean? They're basically going to be one on defense and running the ball. That's
right.
What Billy Napier wants. That's in his DNA. Yet, again, if the defense is god-awful like it was last year, I had all the confidence in the world in that Patrick Toney, yet God, he was awful. He was worse than they were under Todd Grantham. So a lot of pressure on Austin Armstrong. Yeah. I'm not sitting here saying he's got to come in here and we got to be the most dominant defense in the country, because that's not fair. But we have got to see an improvement. We've got to, the good news is what he does well, that's what the Gators need.
Right.
Tackles for loss, turnovers, a very, very, very aggressive forcing offenses into mistakes, because that's what the Gators are going to need to do to be successful next season on the field.
Absolutely. Because they're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with all these teams that they play, especially in their division. So, no, defense is going to be absolutely crucial here. Depth, crucial here. And that's the big thing I'm keeping an eye on this spring is, who else is stepping up? Because it can't just be, hey, these are my best four up front. This is my best four out back. We've got to have loads and loads of talent, because at the end of the season, when we start having injuries and ailments and things like that, we've got to have somebody, but we can't have the drop-off that we saw sometimes last year with Florida, when they had to go to a third-string cornerback or defensive back. So I think that's big here too.
Well, buddy, hey, that's all I got on this episode of the show. I think like you said, someone's breaking into my home here, so I'm going to jump off the line. But you got anything before we hop off?
No. Just again, guys, if you've made it this far, get on YouTube. Get on our YouTube. Hit subscribe. Give that a follow. You've got social medias, get this out there. If we send out a show, if you could retweet us for us, that'd mean a lot.
Yep.
We do this show for free, me and Mike just hanging out. And we've got some really, really killer guests coming on later this week. You guys are going to want to see that. So have those notifications on so you don't miss it.
Absolutely. We're closing in on 10,000 YouTube subscribers. Can't thank y'all enough for doing that. And as always, you do that, reach out to us at That SEC Podcast. Let us know you subscribe on YouTube. We'll send you a beer koozie free of charge. I mean, there ain't a better deal at podcasting than that. You know what?
I always turn it on the TV like somebody's coming over. I'm sorry, I was watching something. It's like, it's just Shane and Mike on TV. Let me just turn that off. Sorry about that.
Well, buddy, I appreciate you as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. Go Vols.